Hi, my name's Cordy, and all I want for Christmas is just to hear our voice again, obviously. So spread triads has been a thing that we're talking about for a while, mostly thanks to the direction of Thomas. We've talked quite a bit about doing this kind of thing. But what we've not done is necessarily some other things which I kind of discovered yesterday, or happened across yesterday. So I was practicing through the tune There'll Never Be Another You, which is going to be the tune that I talk about on Sunday and try and play. You'll probably notice that most triads, given that the three, we're going to end up doing kind of three notes for most of them, which doesn't necessarily phrase hugely well. And I thought, well, maybe we could join up two triad patterns, spread triad patterns, and we'd have then 6 notes, which might rhythmically make a bit more sense, and also gives us kind of a way to join up these shapes in a way that I hadn't necessarily thought of before. So we're jumping up an octave for each. So I thought this would be worth trying. So what I guess the first step would be here is the shapes that we've already learned. Just start putting together the octave above. So it will take time initially. And then G minor, A flat major, B flat major, C minor, and then I think that would be a good step one. What I've done then is, and this is what I talk about and what I think people mean and what I mean when I say about using tunes as a vehicle for kind of training this stuff. I don't necessarily think it's all that worthwhile kind of writing out an entire solo through a tune, but I think it is worth writing out an entire exercise through a tune. And so what I mean by this, so if we take the tune There Will Never Be Another You, so I've called this like building a framework of spread triads, because this can sit as like a layer of training for a tune. So you're not just training this exercise or this concept, but you're also training yourself with the tune. And so when you eventually come to improvise through the tune, this is like a layer of understanding that you have of the tune that you could potentially kind of subconsciously in some ways, but also consciously tap into. And I think it's something I hear people like Julian, Lage and Jonathan Kreisberg doing. But so I'll try and play through some of it and just talk it through briefly. So basically I've written it out in triplets, so we've got 4 triads for each bar. So the first E flat major occurs for 2 bars, so we end up playing 8 triads, spread triads. An inversion, another inversion, second inversion, and back. So we get 4 variations because it's 1 bar of D minor 7 flat 5. And then in first inversion, and again. Our next chord is a G7, so I'm not necessarily trying to voice lead them. That's something that is also worth doing, but here, so a bar of G7, so second inversion, and then first inversion. Our next chord is a C minor, so we get root position, up the octave, then first inversion, then up the octave. We've got another bar of C minor, so another inversion. And then we move down to a B flat minor, root position. And then repeat again, up. And on through the tune. So basically I think that's a super useful way to try and get these kind of things under your fingers. So in first instance maybe you would try and read through it and try and learn some of these bits and get familiar with them. But what I'm going to be trying to do is move away from the page and do this kind of without any prompting, and in that way I'm going to be a bit more spontaneous and kind of joining things up in a different way. And other things you could do, so say you're starting with this E flat major, also we want to be able to descend through the pattern, so what we might try is doing like a that kind of thing. So the first octave, upper octave part, we descend and then ascend. So you could descend, ascend, and then try that through each of the patterns, and take the tune that way. And I think in this way hopefully we start to build up some kind of a framework of triad based thinking, which is relatively flexible and can be relatively spontaneous. And like little things that I was noticing, so for instance you might just take one chord like the D minor 7 flat 5 and try and think of different ways that you could apply that would be interesting in line. So for instance, one I happened across, D minor 7 flat 5, our flat 5 is the A, right? And then third is the F, and then D is our root. So if we were doing a D minor 7 flat 5 to G kind of progression like we do in this tune, something that I kind of discovered through doing this exercise, that kind of line. And so you could take that apart, and so we could take that line and take it around the neck a bit, and take it around the octaves. So each time that it comes round I might potentially try and hit something with that triad. So in that specific instance I'm using D minor 7 flat 5 in first inversion, so targeting that A flat, and I think what that can do is help to really outline these chords in a way that sounds potentially a little less forced than, I think sounds a bit more beautiful than. So I think that's why we might want to practice this kind of thing. So I'm going to try and take this through and see what happens, but what you might also want to do is just try and play it kind of free time and explore what's going on and think about it as it happens. Hopefully this was a vaguely interesting lesson. If you want this tab, it'll be up on my Patreon, and on Sunday I'll be talking about the tune There Will Be Another You in a bit more depth. So just something else quickly that I've decided to do is organise it so that your picking pattern is roughly the same for each one. So I'm organising it in that way. So I have a string, so E string, then the A string, and then G string and jump, and then the same for the bottom set or the next octave. Because I was trying to play it through where I've got things mixed up in a way, and it's just creating additional complexity. So what I mean by this is you could play that second one in a couple of different ways. So what I'm doing is selecting the one that falls so that the picking pattern remains consistent throughout, and then the same with the other inversions. So it's giving me less to have to think about.